Micromanagement doesn't protect your relationship, it quietly poisons it. The more you try to control love, the less love you actually get. And in a minute, you'll feel exactly why. Here's the controversial truth nobody wants to say out loud. When you micromanage your partner, you're not being high standards. You're building a relationship where trust can't breathe. You may call it being responsible, being helpful, being the one who keeps things together. But what your partner often feels is control. And control doesn't create closeness, it creates anxiety. And the counterintuitive part? The harder you try to fix them, the less intimacy you'll feel. Because love isn't a checklist. A partnership isn't a performance review. When someone feels watched, corrected, managed, they don't open up. They shut down. They start saying okay just to avoid conflict, and resentment starts stacking quietly in the background like unopened mail. So here's what you're getting in this video. No fluff, just what works. You'll learn how to replace micromanagement with leadership, how to rebuild communication without turning it into a debate, and how to set boundaries that restore autonomy without losing connection. And you'll get quick wins you can use today, simple sentence swaps and small, no-audit habits that calm the room fast. Because once the room feels safe again, trust comes back. But first, you need to see the real cost of love under surveillance. Because once you recognize it, you can't unsee it. And you'll realize exactly why your relationship has been feeling tense, even on good days. Love starts to feel weird the moment it feels watched. Micromanagement is basically putting a security camera in the middle of your relationship. You don't call it control, you call it being helpful, being careful, being right. But your partner feels the message under the message, I don't trust you. And when trust gets replaced by inspection, the whole partnership changes flavor. Suddenly, every choice becomes a test. Every mistake becomes evidence. Every pause feels suspicious. It's not romance anymore. It's a performance review with feelings attached. And yeah, that creates anxiety, even on days that should feel easy. Because love needs room, not a spotlight. Otherwise, you're not building closeness, you're building a case file. Think of your relationship like a garden, not a factory line. Micromanagement treats a human heart like a machine that needs constant adjustment. But hearts don't bloom under control. They bloom under safety, patience, and trust. When you hover, you steal autonomy, and autonomy is oxygen for grown adults. Without it, your partner doesn't relax, they brace. And when someone is bracing, real intimacy can't fully show up. They start choosing the approved version of themselves just to avoid conflict. That's how tiny corrections turn into invisible walls, silent boundaries nobody agreed on. And behind those walls, resentment quietly takes notes. Not loudly, just steadily, like water filling a basement. Let's make it painfully practical for a second. If you're correcting the way they load the dishwasher, text their mom, drive, spend, or even breathe. Yeah, that's micromanagement. If you rewrite their messages, fix their tone, or monitor their every decision, that's control wearing a friendly mask. Here's a cleaner move. Ask one question before you give one instruction. Try, do you want support or do you want space? That's real communication. And set a boundary for yourself. No correcting unless safety is at stake. If you need structure, agree on simple boundaries together, like we don't nitpick in the kitchen, or we don't audit each other's work. And give them one full area where they own the outcome. Money category, chores, parenting routine, full autonomy. You'll be shocked how fast trust grows when you stop grabbing the steering wheel. And if you slip, don't defend. Own it. I got anxious and tried to control this. Now here's the part most people don't want to hear. Micromanagement isn't just annoying. It can feel humiliating, like being treated as a child in your own home. Your partner may smile, nod, say, "Sure, babe," and still feel smaller inside. That shrinking is dangerous because it kills desire. Intimacy hates being policed. You can't ask someone to be open and playful while you're grading them like a teacher. Eventually, they stop sharing ideas, stop initiating, stop risking honesty. They choose silence over another correction, distance over another lecture. And then you feel the coldness and think, why are they pulling away? But resentment doesn't announce itself. It just changes the temperature of the room. And that temperature shift is your relationship warning light. So if love has started to feel tense, you don't need more pressure. You need a different posture. Less, I'll manage this. More, we'll figure this out, like true partnership. Because trust isn't built by monitoring. It's built by allowing someone to breathe and still be respected. And when you give autonomy, you don't lose power, you gain peace. Your communication becomes warmer, your boundaries become clearer, and your anxiety stops running the show. But here's the twist. Even if you stop micromanagement today, there's still a question hanging in the air. What happens to trust after it's been slowly drained? Can it actually come back? That's where things get real. Because the next layer isn't about behavior. It's about what your partner believes is true about you now. And that belief, right or wrong, is what you'll deal with next. Trust doesn't usually explode, it leaks. Micromanagement is that tiny drip you ignore at first, until one day the whole ceiling caves in, because every just do it this way sounds small, but it stacks. And what stacks isn't advice, it's a pattern, control over autonomy, correction over confidence. Your partner starts to feel like you're not with them, you're over them. Like a boss hovering behind their chair, tapping the desk, watching the clock. That's not love, that's surveillance with a smile. And once trust starts dying, it doesn't die loudly. It dies quietly, politely, and painfully. They stop arguing. Not because they agree, but because they're tired. And tired people don't build intimacy, they protect themselves. Here's the hard truth. You can't micromanage someone into feeling safe with you. Safety comes from being believed in, not being monitored. When you overcheck, overcorrect, overfollow up, you teach them one thing. I expect you to fail. Even if you never say those words, your behavior says it for you. And the human mind is simple in this way. What you repeat becomes what they believe. So they start second-guessing themselves. Then they start hiding things to avoid criticism. Not because they're sneaky, because they're trying to breathe. That's how micromanagement creates the very dishonesty it claims to prevent. Anxiety rises, communication becomes filtered, and boundaries get blurry. Then you both feel lonely in the same room. Let's talk about what this looks like in real life. It's when you ask, "Did you do it?" 3 times, not because it matters, because you don't feel calm until you know. It's when you help by taking over, then act annoyed that they didn't do it right. It's when you track their choices like you're collecting evidence, texts, receipts, timings, tone. And if you're on the receiving end, you learn a survival skill. You say yes fast. You agree quickly, you keep your opinions small, you avoid anything that could trigger a lecture. That's not harmony, that's emotional shrinking. A healthy partnership has 2 adults at the wheel. Micromanagement turns one adult into a driver and the other into a passenger who's not allowed to touch anything. And passengers eventually stop feeling like they belong in the trip. If you want a practical shift that works fast, try this. Replace check-ins with check trust. Instead of "Did you do it?" say, "Do you feel clear on it, or do you want help?" Instead of "Why did you do it that way?" say, "Walk me through your thinking. I want to understand." That tiny change turns control into curiosity, and curiosity heals trust. Also, pick one area where you stop correcting completely for 14 days. Yes, 14, not "I'll try." 14 days, no critique, no fixing, no hovering. If it's chores, let them own a full routine. If it's planning, let them plan the weekend once. Your job is to notice your anxiety without obeying it, like watching a barking dog behind a fence. And when you mess up, use repair language. "I slipped into control. I'm working on it. Thanks for your patience." That kind of communication is grown-up love. But here's the part that stings. Sometimes, after months or years of micromanagement, your partner doesn't just doubt your behavior. They doubt your motives. They wonder, do you even respect me? And respect is the spine of intimacy. Without it, affection becomes thin and fragile. They may still love you, but love starts to feel unsafe. So they create distance, emotional, physical, or both, and you feel them fading. That's when people panic and tighten the grip, which makes it worse. Because the cure for low trust is not more control. It's consistent freedom, consistent respect, consistent repair. And now the question becomes, what if your micromanagement was disguised as help? What if what you call support actually feels like a quiet insult? That's the next layer, because the wound isn't always the control. Sometimes it's what the control says about how you see them. Let's be honest, micromanagement rarely walks in saying, "Hey, I'm here to control you." It walks in wearing a nice outfit and a good excuse. "I'm just trying to help." And sometimes you really mean it. No villain music, no bad intentions, but impact beats intention every single time. Because to the other person, constant help can sound like this: "You can't handle life without me." That's not support. That's a quiet downgrade. It's like you're taking a marker and circling their mistakes in red ink, then calling it love. Over time, that chips away at autonomy, and you can't build a healthy partnership on top of a person who feels small. That's where resentment starts growing roots, slow, silent, stubborn, and it almost always shows up before you notice it. Picture it like this. Your partner is carrying a box and you keep grabbing it from their hands, not because the box is too heavy, but because you hate the feeling of it wobbling. So you save them again and again. And then you wonder why they stop trying. Because when you constantly step in, you teach them, "Don't bother, you'll just get corrected." And that lesson turns into a personality change. They become hesitant, passive, second-guessing, then you label them as lazy or incompetent. That's the tragedy. Control can create the exact weakness it fears. And when that happens, trust gets twisted. You don't trust them, and they stop trusting themselves. Now you're both stuck in a loop where love feels like pressure, and pressure doesn't create closeness, it creates anxiety. This is why people pull away even when you're doing so much. They don't feel cared for. They feel managed. They start hiding their choices, not to be sneaky, but to protect their dignity. They'll do things privately so they don't have to hear the commentary. They'll say, "It's fine," when it's not fine, because communication feels unsafe. And then you're confused. Why won't you talk to me? Because every time they talk, they feel corrected. So they shrink their honesty into something small and harmless. That's what micromanagement does. It turns real conversations into status updates. And that's how intimacy quietly starves while you're busy helping. Here's a practical way to flip help into actual help. Before you offer advice, ask permission. Yes, literally. Want my input, or do you just want me to listen? It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it's powerful because it honors boundaries. And boundaries aren't walls, they're respect made visible. Then switch from fixing to backing. Instead of taking over, stand next to them. If they're stressed with a task, don't grab the wheel. Offer a seatbelt. "I've got your back. What part feels hardest?" If they mess up, don't say, "I told you." Say, "Okay, what did we learn?" You're shifting from control to coaching, from critique to partnership. And if you need a model, think of the best teachers you ever had. They didn't humiliate you. They built you. That's the vibe you're after. But let's go deeper. Micromanagement often comes from fear, not arrogance. You're afraid things will fall apart, afraid you'll be blamed, afraid you'll lose them. So you try to prevent pain by controlling outcomes. Totally human. The problem is, fear makes you treat your partner like a risk instead of a person. And nobody wants to be loved like a liability. That's where trust breaks in a different way. because your partner feels unseen. They don't feel like you're equal. They feel like your project. And then the question becomes uncomfortable. If they finally stand up for themselves, will you respect their autonomy or punish it? Because the moment someone stops complying, you find out whether your love was real or conditional, and that's exactly where the next topic hits. The yes that isn't consent, the compliance that looks like peace but isn't. Sometimes the most dangerous word in a relationship is okay. Not the warm, willing kind, the tired kind, the survival kind. The okay that means I don't have the energy to fight you again. Micromanagement trains people to become peacekeepers, not partners. They learn that disagreeing costs too much, so they start paying with their silence. And from the outside, it looks calm. No drama, no yelling, no conflict. But inside, resentment is stacking like unpaid bills. Because compliance isn't connection, and obedience isn't intimacy. If your relationship is peaceful only when one person shrinks, that peace is borrowed, and borrowed peace always collects interest later. Here's how it happens. Your partner notices what triggers your correction. A different opinion, a slower pace, a choice you wouldn't make. So they adjust, they soften, they agree faster. They stop bringing things up. Not because they're suddenly aligned with you, but because they're managing your mood. That's a quiet form of emotional labor nobody celebrates. They're constantly scanning, is this going to turn into a lecture? That's anxiety, not love, not safety. And the saddest part, you might interpret their yes as proof you're right, but it might actually be proof they've stopped feeling safe enough to be real. That's how communication becomes a script instead of a bond. Think of it like music. A relationship needs harmony, but harmony requires two real notes, not one note and an echo. When micromanagement enters, the second note gets quieter and quieter until it's barely there. Now you're not in a duet. You're performing solo with someone clapping politely in the corner, and you can feel it, even if you can't explain it. Something's missing, the spark, the play, the honest pushback that makes life feel alive. Because autonomy is attractive. A person with opinions is magnetic, but if you keep correcting their opinions, you drain that magnetism. Then you wonder why things feel flat, why the jokes don't land, why the hugs feel rushed. It's not random, it's the cost of control. If you want to test whether the yes in your relationship is real, watch what happens when you welcome a no. Say something like, "You can disagree with me, I won't punish you for it," and then prove it with your face, your tone, your timing, because words alone don't rebuild trust. Give them time to speak without interruption. No defending, no explaining, no lawyer energy. Just listen like you're receiving a gift, not a threat. Then ask follow-ups that show respect. What do you want instead? What would feel fair? This is how you turn communication back into something alive. And if conflict scares you, set boundaries around conflict itself. We'll pause if we get heated, but we won't avoid the truth. That creates safety without surrendering the relationship to chaos. It's not about winning, it's about staying on the same side. Now let's be real. If you've been micromanaging, you might be addicted to being needed. That sounds harsh, but it's common. Being the competent one can feel like identity, like purpose, like power. And when your partner starts stepping up, it can feel oddly threatening. So you unconsciously pull them back down with criticism. That's why the yes becomes automatic, because your partner senses you need that control to feel okay. But love isn't supposed to be a cage that keeps your ego comfortable. A healthy partnership makes both people stronger, not smaller. And once your partner starts noticing their yes isn't true, a bigger shift is coming. Because sooner or later, they'll stop being compliant and start pulling away. And that's when you meet the next topic. Intimacy can't live in a checklist because love can't survive constant grading. The moment love turns into a checklist, something tender starts to die. Not all at once, more like a candle losing oxygen. Micromanagement makes everything feel scored, the right way to talk, the right way to help, the right way to exist. And when your partner feels graded, they stop feeling desired, because intimacy isn't built under control. It's built under warmth, play, and permission to be imperfect. You can't flirt while you're being corrected. You can't relax while you're being monitored. Even your home starts to feel like a workplace. Meetings, standards, performance. That's why affection becomes stiff. Why "I love you" starts sounding like a routine. Your nervous system doesn't know romance from risk when the vibe is scrutiny. And slowly, trust turns into tension you both pretend not to see. Here's a metaphor that hits. Micromanagement is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. You think you're keeping the relationship secure, but you're actually crushing what makes it alive. And your partner learns to protect their soft parts. They'll joke less, share less, dream less, because every vulnerable thing feels like it could be improved. That's where autonomy matters again. People open up when they're free, not when they're managed. Freedom is the soil. Safety is the rain. Curiosity is the sunlight. But constant correction is like frost. Quiet, invisible, deadly to growth. And yes, it creates anxiety even if nobody names it, because your partner starts anticipating your reaction more than enjoying your presence. Let's make it concrete. You can micromanage romance without realizing it. You correct how they plan dates, how they give gifts, how they apologize, how they comfort you. You coach their tone, say it nicer. Not like that. You're doing it wrong. And you may think you're teaching them how to love you. But what you're really teaching is, your love isn't good enough unless it matches my script, so they stop improvising. They stop initiating. They stop risking rejection. That's why communication turns dry, because every message feels like it'll be edited. And then you both miss the old spark without realizing you built a system that suffocates it. A relationship can't be both a safe haven and a constant exam. If you want to bring intimacy back, you need to switch from evaluation mode to experience mode. Try this for 1 week. No correcting during moments of connection. None. If you feel the urge, swallow it like a sip of bitter medicine and breathe. Then replace critique with a request. Could you do more of this? Instead of stop doing that. Your brain hears requests as collaboration. It hears criticism as attack. Also practice 2 appreciations before 1 adjustment. It sounds cheesy, but it rewires the emotional climate. Be specific. I love how you made me laugh today, or thank you for handling that call. That builds trust and makes boundaries easier to discuss without war. And if you need structure, agree on a weekly relationship meeting, so daily life isn't one long critique session. Contain the problem solving so the rest of your week can actually feel like love. But here's the twist nobody expects. Once you stop micromanaging, you might feel a strange emptiness, because control can become a coping strategy, a way to calm your own fear. When you let go, your anxiety might spike at first, like withdrawal. That doesn't mean you're wrong, it means you're healing. And your partner might not instantly relax either, because their body remembers the old pattern. So you'll need patience and consistency, real communication, not speeches. Because intimacy isn't restored by one grand gesture. It's restored by a new emotional climate, repeated daily. And as that climate changes, something else shows up. The quiet revenge of resentment. Not dramatic revenge, subtle stuff, distance, delays, forgetting, emotional fog. That's the next topic, and it's where a lot of relationships either wake up or slowly fall asleep. Resentment is rarely loud. It's not a shouting match, it's a slow closing of doors. It's your partner saying sure while their heart quietly steps back. Micromanagement plants resentment like a seed, then waters it with little daily corrections. And one day you wake up and the relationship feels colder, but you can't explain why. That's because resentment doesn't show up as anger first. It shows up as distance, less eye contact, shorter answers, fewer playful touches, more "I'm tired." You start feeling like you're living with someone who's physically there, but emotionally elsewhere. And that's when people panic and try more control, which is like throwing gasoline on a candle. Because resentment grows when autonomy is squeezed and boundaries are ignored. It's the quiet revenge of a person who stopped feeling respected. Think of resentment like sand in an engine. The car still runs for a while, so you assume everything's fine. But every mile adds friction, every day adds wear, until the breakdown feels sudden. It wasn't sudden, it was ignored. Micromanagement creates that sand because it turns the relationship into a constant you versus my standards. And when someone feels constantly judged, they start protecting themselves with emotional shortcuts. They'll stop initiating communication because it feels pointless. They'll do the bare minimum to avoid criticism, not because they don't care, but because caring costs too much. And if you ask, "What's wrong?" they'll say nothing, because something would become another conversation where they don't win. That's the tragedy. Resentment often looks like laziness, but it's usually a bruised spirit. And a bruised spirit can't offer real intimacy. Here's how resentment typically gets back at micromanagement without any villain plot. They start withholding cooperation. "Forget it, I'll let you do it." They delay responses. They forget tasks. They miss details. Not always on purpose, but their motivation dries up because trust dried up first. They might even become sarcastic, passive-aggressive, or overly independent. And you feel that shift and think they're being difficult. But in their mind, they're reclaiming autonomy, the only way they know how. Because if they can't be free in the relationship, they'll be free from the relationship emotionally. That's why resentment is so dangerous. It's not just a feeling, it's a strategy. A strategy to avoid pain, avoid correction, avoid being small. And strategies become habits faster than we think. So what do you do when resentment is already in the room? You don't fix it with speeches, you fix it with repair. And repair is a behavior, not a vibe. Start with one sentence that disarms defensiveness. "I think my control has hurt you. I want to understand." Then shut up long enough for them to feel safe speaking. No interrupting, no counterpoints. Ask specific questions. Where do you feel managed? When do you feel least respected? And when they answer, don't debate their reality. Validate it. That makes sense. I can see how that would feel suffocating. Validation is not surrender. It's communication that rebuilds trust. Then make one measurable promise. This week I'm not correcting chores. Next week we pick one boundary together. Resentment softens when the person sees consistent respect, not temporary guilt. Consistency is the language of safety. But here's the catch. Resentment doesn't leave just because you stop micromanaging. It leaves when your partner believes again that you're not trying to shape them into your idea of right. Why? They need evidence that you respect their autonomy even when you disagree. And that's where the next topic bites. What kind of resentment do you create when you turn love into leadership? But the wrong kind. Because the next layer isn't about obvious control. It's about the subtle way you can manage someone's feelings, decisions, even their identity. And if you don't notice it, resentment doesn't just stay quiet, it becomes a wall. A wall that blocks intimacy and turns the relationship into a polite roommate situation. So now the question is, what are you actually building? Connection or compliance? That's exactly what we'll hit next, because the next topic is about the partner you're unintentionally creating. Micromanagement doesn't just change the mood, it rewires the people inside the relationship. You think you're raising the standard, but you might be lowering your partner's spirit. Because when someone is constantly corrected, they don't become sharper, they become safer. Safer meaning smaller, quieter, less likely to try, less likely to risk. And then you look at them and say, "Why are you so passive lately?" But passivity is often learned. It's the natural response to living under control. If every move gets edited, eventually they stop moving unless you tell them to. That's not who they really are. That's who your relationship trained them to become. And the saddest part, you can end up resenting the very dependence you created. That's how trust and partnership quietly get replaced by a parent-child dynamic. Think about it like this. You can't criticize someone into confidence. Confidence grows from ownership, making choices, making mistakes, learning, improving. But micromanagement steals that growth process. It interrupts the lesson before it lands. It's like pulling a kid off a bike every time they wobble, then wondering why they never learn balance. Except your partner isn't a kid. They're an adult with a nervous system. So when you hover, you trigger anxiety, not motivation. They start thinking, if I do it my way, I'll get criticized. If I do it your way, I'll lose myself. So they choose a third option. Do less, care less, show less. That's how autonomy gets traded for avoidance. And avoidance looks like laziness, but it's usually self-protection. Here's a very real pattern. The more you micromanage, the more your partner asks you what to do. What do you want? Is this okay? Should I do it now? At first, you might like it. Being needed can feel good. But over time, it gets exhausting. You feel like everything depends on you. And then you complain, why do I have to think of everything? But if you punish initiative with correction, you can't be shocked when initiative disappears. This is why boundaries matter. Not just boundaries against them, but boundaries against your own impulse to take over. Because every takeover is a little vote against their capability. And too many votes create a new identity. I'm not capable. That identity is poison to intimacy and communication. So let's flip the script with practical moves you can actually apply. Start giving ownership zones, areas where your partner makes decisions without your approval. Pick something specific: dinner planning, weekend schedule, budgeting a small category, handling a call, managing one household system. And when they do it differently than you would, practice the hardest skill in love, letting different be okay. If it's not unsafe, let it stand. Your trust grows in the space you don't control. Then use coaching language instead of manager language. Try, what's your plan? What feels like the next step? How do you want to handle it? Those questions restore autonomy and strengthen partnership. And when they succeed, even in a small way, say it out loud. Specific praise is emotional fertilizer. Now you might be thinking, but if I don't manage it, things will fall apart. That fear is common, and it's exactly why micromanagement feels so tempting. But here's the twist. If your relationship can only function when you control everything, it's already falling apart. A healthy partnership is two people holding the same roof, not one person carrying the whole house. So your job isn't to tighten the grip. It's to build systems that don't require grip, clear agreements, shared expectations, respectful communication, and yes, real boundaries. I won't take over. I'll ask, I'll listen, and we'll decide together. That's not weakness. It's leadership with humility, because the partner you want isn't someone who obeys. It's someone who chooses you freely, confidently, with their full self intact. And once you start creating that kind of partner, something else becomes obvious. Your home can't be a place of constant pressure, because even if your partner grows, they still burn out if they're always under evaluation. That's where we go next. Emotional burnout at home, and why love starts feeling like a job. Because when the relationship becomes exhausting, even strong people start shutting down. There's a special kind of exhaustion that happens when home stops feeling like home. Not, I'm tired from work, tired. More like, I can't relax even in my own living room, tired. Micromanagement creates that because it turns everyday life into a constant inspection. You walk into the kitchen and you don't feel peace. You feel pressure. You start anticipating criticism like it's background noise. And your nervous system stays switched on, like a phone that never leaves low power mode. That's anxiety living inside the relationship, not outside it. And when a person is burnt out, they don't offer more intimacy. They offer less presence, not because they don't care, but because they're out of emotional fuel. This is how love doesn't end dramatically. It fades from chronic depletion. Think of emotional burnout like trying to sprint while holding your breath. You can do it for a few seconds, maybe even a minute, but not forever. Micromanagement makes your partner hold their breath socially. Did I do it right? Will this start a fight? Is my tone okay? That constant self-monitoring drains energy faster than any chore. And here's the cruel irony. You might be micromanaging because you want things to be better, but the atmosphere you create makes everything feel worse. Even good moments get contaminated, like a clean glass of water with one drop of bitter medicine. You laugh, but the laugh is guarded. You hug, but the hug is short. Because burnt-out people can't fully receive love, they're too busy protecting themselves. In real life, burnout shows up in tiny ways that people misread. Your partner stops planning dates, stops initiating conversations, stops being playful. They scroll more, sleep more, forget things more. You might label it as laziness, but it's emotional shutdown. It's their brain saying, if I engage, I'll get corrected and I don't have it in me. So they choose the safest behavior, minimal interaction. This is where communication gets weird. Short texts, vague answers, whatever you want, and you feel abandoned, so you tighten control, and the cycle speeds up. Burnout plus control is a relationship treadmill. Both of you running, nobody getting anywhere. Here's a mentor-level reset that actually works. Create no audit zones. Pick at least one daily hour where there's zero critique, zero fixing, zero problem-solving. Call it your soft hour. Dinner, a walk, a late-night tea. Whatever fits. During that time, your only job is to be warm, curious, and human. If something is messy, let it be messy. If something is imperfect, let it breathe. That hour rebuilds trust because it proves the relationship isn't conditional on performance. Next, reduce the daily corrections by turning them into scheduled agreements. Instead of constant micromanagement, do one weekly check-in. What's working? What needs adjusting? That protects boundaries and protects your nervous systems from constant conflict. It turns your relationship from a battlefield into a workshop, one day a week, not every hour. Now let's talk about the emotional truth underneath burnout. Most people don't leave because of one big thing. They leave because they're tired of feeling wrong, tired of feeling watched, tired of trying and still being corrected. And once burnout hits, even love starts feeling like labor, like you're clocking in at home. So if you want your partnership to last, you must make home a place where someone can fail safely, where autonomy is respected, where communication isn't punished. Because when someone finally experiences safety with you, their energy comes back. They laugh again, they initiate again, they soften again. But there's one more layer you can't ignore. Why do you micromanage in the first place? Because under the behavior, there's usually fear. Fear of chaos, fear of being hurt, fear of losing control. And that fear is the next topic, because until you face it, burnout will keep returning in a new outfit. Most people don't micromanage because they're evil. They micromanage because they're scared. Scared that if they don't hold everything together, it'll fall apart, and they'll be left holding the blame. So control becomes your security blanket, your emotional seatbelt. You tighten it when life feels unpredictable, when love feels risky, when your chest gets that little spike of anxiety, and you tell yourself it's about standards or efficiency or just being responsible. But deep down, it's about fear. Fear of being disappointed, betrayed, embarrassed, abandoned. And fear has a sneaky habit. It tries to protect you by making you dangerous to love. Because when fear drives, it doesn't create safety. It creates surveillance. And surveillance is the opposite of trust, even when it's dressed up as care. So the real question isn't, how do I stop micromanaging? It's, what am I afraid will happen if I let go? Think of fear like a smoke alarm that's too sensitive. It goes off when you burn toast and suddenly you're acting like the house is on fire. Micromanagement is what you do when your inner smoke alarm keeps screaming. So you start controlling the environment to calm the alarm, their choices, their tone, their timing. But here's the catch. Controlling the environment doesn't heal the alarm. It just teaches your brain that the world is unsafe unless you're in charge. That's why autonomy in a relationship can feel threatening when you're anxious, because autonomy means uncertainty, and uncertainty pokes your fear. So you manage, you correct, you oversee, anything to avoid that inner discomfort. But every time you do that, you transfer your fear into your partner's body. Now, both of you are anxious, and intimacy has no clean air to breathe. Let's ground this in a real example. Imagine your partner plans a weekend differently than you would. Your stomach tightens. Your mind starts writing disaster stories. They'll mess it up. We'll waste money. It'll be awkward. So you step in. You take over. You fix it. And yes, maybe the weekend goes smoother, but you just taught your relationship a rule. My anxiety is the boss. A better move is this. Name the fear silently before you act. Try, I'm feeling anxious. My brain wants control. Then pause for 10 seconds. 10 seconds is enough to break the reflex. Then use communication that reveals vulnerability instead of control. I'm nervous about this. Can we plan together? That keeps boundaries and keeps dignity intact. It turns fear into connection instead of domination. Now, if your fear runs deep, you need deeper tools, not just willpower. Here are a few that actually work in the real world. 1. Journal one page when you feel the urge to micromanage. What outcome am I trying to prevent? 2. Use a simple risk list. Write the worst-case scenario, then write 3 realistic outcomes. Fear hates realism. 3. Practice tolerating imperfection like a workout. Choose one small thing to let be messy on purpose, then breathe through it. 4. If you want a powerful book that makes this click emotionally, read Attached, Levine and Heller, for relationship patterns, and The Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown, for the shame control loop. These aren't magic spells, but they give language to what's happening inside you. And language gives you power, because when you can name your fear, you're less likely to obey it. That's how trust starts rebuilding, not by pretending you're chill, but by being honest and regulated. But here's the most important mentor point. Your partner isn't the enemy. Your fear is. And if you keep fighting fear with control, you'll keep paying with resentment. Because fear-based love always has conditions. I'll feel safe when you do it my way. And that's not love. That's a contract written by anxiety. Real partnership is different. We'll handle uncertainty together without humiliating each other. And that brings us to the final topic, the shift that changes everything. Because it's not enough to stop controlling. You need a new way to lead the relationship, a way that protects boundaries, strengthens autonomy, and makes communication feel safe again. That's what we're doing next, the mentor shift. From control to leadership, from fear to trust. Here's the upgrade that changes everything. You stop trying to manage your partner and start learning how to lead yourself. Because micromanagement is leadership aimed outward, trying to control the world so you don't have to feel uncertainty inside. Real leadership is the opposite. It's calm on the inside, clear on the outside. It's not, do it my way. It's, let's build a way we both respect. That's what a real partnership feels like. Two adults, one team, one direction, and the minute you shift into that, your relationship stops feeling like a courtroom. It starts feeling like a safe home again, where trust can actually regrow, not by force, but by consistency, not by perfection, but by repair. Because love doesn't need a manager, it needs a steady presence. And that presence is built through communication, boundaries, and respect for autonomy. Let's use a simple metaphor. Micromanagement is driving with your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. You're saying, go forward, while your behavior says, don't move without me. Leadership removes the brake. It doesn't remove standards. It removes humiliation. You can still want a good life, a clean home, a stable future. But you stop trying to get those things by shrinking your partner. Instead, you create agreements like adults. Here's what matters to me. Here's what matters to you. What's fair? That's a boundary conversation, not a control fight. And here's a wild truth. People rise faster when they're respected than when they're corrected. Respect is gasoline. Constant critique is sand in the engine. If you want more effort, more care, more initiative, lead with respect. That's how you get real, sustainable change. Now let's get tactical, because leadership has behaviors you can practice today. First, replace commands with choices. Instead of do this, try would you rather handle A or B. Choice restores autonomy and lowers anxiety instantly. Second, replace criticism with clarity. Instead of, you never, try, here's what I need and why it matters. Third, create a repair reflex. When you slip into control, you repair fast. That came out controlling. Let me rephrase. Fourth, create shared standards together, not imposed standards. Write them down if needed. Example, we keep the kitchen functional by 9 p.m. Not, you're doing it wrong again. Fifth, praise progress in real time. Specific praise builds trust faster than grand speeches. This isn't soft, it's strategic. Praise is a tool that reshapes behavior without bruising the bond. And when your partner feels respected, their energy comes back. That's when intimacy returns. Here's another piece. Leadership means you stop confusing anxiety with intuition. I just know they'll mess it up feeling. That's often your nervous system, not reality. So you learn to pause, breathe, and ask, is this a true issue or a fear issue? If it's a true issue, you discuss it with calm communication and clear boundaries. If it's a fear issue, you self-regulate instead of outsourcing your regulation to your partner. That's maturity. That's power. And yes, it's uncomfortable at first, because letting go of control can feel like stepping into fog. But the fog clears as your body learns you can survive uncertainty without grabbing the wheel. That's how you stop turning love into supervision, and your partner starts believing again, I can be myself here. That belief is the doorway back to closeness. If you want a simple weekly structure that makes this shift stick, try the 3-part check-in. Part 1, appreciation. Each person says one specific thing they value. Part 2, need. Each person says one need without blame. I need more help with bedtime. I need more affection. I need quiet time. Part 3, agreement. Pick one small action each person will do this week. That structure protects boundaries, strengthens communication, and reduces the random daily nitpicking that kills peace. It's leadership because it's proactive, not reactive. And it makes your relationship feel like a team again, not a tug of war. Most importantly, it trains you both to solve problems without disrespect. Because the goal isn't to win arguments. The goal is to build a home where nobody has to shrink. Now notice what just happened across all these topics. The enemy was never your partner's mistakes. The enemy was the pattern, fear, control, reduced autonomy, rising anxiety, collapsing trust. growing resentment. And the solution isn't a pep talk. It's a new way of relating, steady, respectful, intentional. So now you're standing at a doorway. You can keep managing, or you can start leading. But there's one piece we haven't built yet, the part that hooks people in the first seconds and makes them stay. Because even the best message dies if it doesn't grab the heart fast. Next, we'll craft the introduction that lands the truth early, creates FOMO, and makes the viewer feel, oh, this is about me. That's where the whole video becomes impossible to ignore. If you've been micromanaging, don't waste time drowning in guilt. Use that awareness like a key, because now you know what's really been happening. Control doesn't create safety, it creates anxiety. And the moment your partner feels watched instead of trusted, trust starts leaking, communication turns cautious, autonomy gets crushed, and resentment begins doing its quiet work in the background. So here's your move. Pick one thing you're going to stop auditing this week. Just one. Let it be imperfect on purpose, and watch what happens to the emotional temperature in your home. Now ask yourself something that's uncomfortable but powerful. Where are you trying to control your partner because you don't know how to calm yourself? What fear are you protecting? Fear of chaos, of being disappointed, of being abandoned, of not being enough. And if your partner could speak freely without consequences, what would they say they miss most about who they used to be around you? That answer, if you're brave enough to hear it, can save your partnership. So here's a challenge. For the next 7 days, trade correction for curiosity. Before you fix, ask. Before you teach, listen. Replace, why did you do it like that? With help me understand your thinking. Replace, just do it my way. With what feels fair to you. And the moment you feel that urge to grab the wheel, practice leadership, pause, breathe, and choose boundaries over control. That's how you rebuild intimacy. Not with grand speeches, but with consistent respect that makes a person feel safe to be real again. And I want to hear from you. What's one area where micromanagement has been hurting your relationship? Money, chores, parenting, communication, planning, or emotional support? And what's one sentence you're going to start using instead of criticism? Drop it in the comments. Don't be vague, make it specific. Because when you name it, you own it. And when you own it, you can change it. If this hit you in the chest a little, that's a sign you're ready for the next level. Subscribe to Mind Silent Echo and turn on notifications, because we're going deeper into the patterns that sabotage love, the habits that rebuild trust, and the mentor-level shifts that make your relationship stronger without losing yourself. I'll see you in the next video.